being present.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Being present, I think, is an important part of everybody's mental health, given all of the different pieces that are coming across everybody's plates now. All of you who are on this meeting are probably parents, step parents, guardians, et cetera. So, helping our children kind of get through this time of their life, usually outside of a pandemic, is tough. And now it's like every day is a different day. So I'm dealing with it at home, I think, as many of you are. And things that worked 2 years ago don't work anymore. So anyway, so really just want to encourage you all to be present. If you can, turn on your camera. I would love to. Taryn, if you could make me the co-host, that would be great. I'd love to set up some breakout rooms. And if that doesn't work, then that's okay. If people are just kind of like listening in the background or listening in the car and that doesn't work, that's all right too. But so we've got the article to talk about. But I also wanted to just kind of like open it up as well. There may be questions about COVID. There may be questions about student safety and that kind of thing. So we'll start by just opening it up if there are any questions, and then we can get into the article if there are not, or once all those questions are answered. So feel free to just unmute yourself. You can raise your hand, which kind of pops you to the top of the list here if you would like. Totally up to you if you have any questions.
Can I ask a really simple question, maybe just by way of warm up? I understand that now coming back from break, the kids are being encouraged to use their lockers.
Correct.
And believe it or not, this is creating its own stress. Can you just help us to understand what is the messaging around the lockers? Why do we want the kids to use the lockers? Can they still carry their backpacks around the school? Any clarification or guidance you can offer would be great.
Yeah, sure. So our hallways have been very crowded. And part of that crowding has to do with a large backpack, right? So basically for every one student, you end up with the equivalent of two once you have a backpack. So that's a big piece of it. It has to do with the crowding of the hallways. Also has to do with the safety in the classrooms. As students come through, you probably, again, if you look across the screen, you may know some children who probably come in and put their backpacks on the back of their seats. And you probably know that there are some other students who come in, throw their backpacks on the floor, then a book is over here, a backpack strap is over here, and it ends up creating a safety issue in our classrooms as well. So we'll start with health and safety. But I think another big piece of adolescence has to do with executive functioning skills. And for those of you who don't speak educationalese, it's just like, what are the things that I need for success in a classroom? So we've found that a lot of kids are carrying everything all the time because they're unsure of exactly what they need. So adding that additional layer in there, we don't want it to be stressful, although we know initially it probably will be. But we do want kids to start thinking about, like, what do I need for success in this class? Most of it starts with a device, but then there are some classes where we need, and we've asked our teachers in preparation for this to be very specific with what students will need. So they've communicated through Schoology. Some people just have kind of standing expectations in their classrooms as well. But so it's a multi-pronged approach. We did check with other middle schools kind of in our area as well. Most have already removed the backpacks. Most did it like end of October, early November. So we're probably a little late to the game on that. But we are also not on our own we're, going in. So yes, we did have, we have not had the calls that we usually have on the walkie-talkie. My first couple of years here with jammed locker, et cetera. But we did have to review with some students, especially our 8th graders, who, used it for 6 months their 6th grade year and then haven't used it since, some of them. So, but I think it went really well yesterday. The hallways appeared better. Students adjust to most things. I think a lot of the anxiety comes from a lot of us as we are trying to kind of like manage the kids' stress at home. And just so you know, again, it was in the email, but I know we're kind of like overwhelmed with information these days. So 6th graders have certain locker stops. 6th graders have 4 locker stops beginning of the day. before lunch, after lunch, and end of the day. Seventh graders have 5 locker stops just because of like where their lunch comes in. Sixth grade lunch is right in the middle of the day, so they can prepare for the first half of the day and the second half of the day. And eighth graders, we are allowing a lot more freedom because next year they will be allowed to go to their lockers, or I think maybe even carry backpacks in the high school. But eighth graders can go whenever they'd like, as long as they're not late to class. And if that's the case, then we need to work with our eighth graders individually. So we kind of like, we move along the spectrum. So 4, 5, and unlimited over their time here, because we do want them to get those executive functioning skills and then put them to use and say, like, I don't need to go to my locker between all classes. That's what we're hoping our eighth graders will do. So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yep, absolutely.
Lee,
Any
do you
other
have a
questions?
question?
Yes. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Question. Are the teachers, have they gone through any additional training in regards to dealing with children that are struggling more? Is there anything going on in regards to, again, executive functioning skills are key for most students, but not, I don't want to say leniency, but just kind of helping them. I mean, it's very tough right now for a lot of kids, as you know, but are the teachers kind of leaning into being a little more compassionate? I don't know. Is that been
Yeah, I
discussed?
think so far this year, we've had 3 months of social emotional learning lessons. So each teacher, so if you're a period 1 teacher, you're teaching the lesson to all of your period 1 students. So that's how we're kind of like building in some training both for our teachers, because they have to prepare for the lesson. So our school psychologist looked at kind of like all the social emotional wellness stuff over this past summer, created a number of lessons that we're then asking teachers to implement in their classroom. So during our faculty meetings, we review what the lesson is. Our school psychologist put some notes in there for our teachers so that because like that's not in a teacher's wheelhouse necessarily, right? Where it might be more in a school psychologist's realm. So the notes are put in there so people can read it and prepare for the lesson, and then they go through and give the lesson. So, and we've picked some specific days so our school psychologists can go into classrooms. So like you might not see 6th grade learning the same thing on the same day as a 7th grader, so that our school psychologists can move around the building as well. So that's part of the training. The other thing that we are talking about though, kind of behind the scenes that you'll be the first to know, I guess, are some executive functioning pieces of information. So a couple of years ago, Catherine McNulty, our director of special education, invited some of our special education teachers, because some students might qualify for special education needs based on their executive functioning skills. So we started there, and really a lot of there were 3 teachers in that initial training. And those teachers said, like, wow, this could really fit to all the kids who are in my co-taught class, general education or not. So working right now with Catherine Graybosch and some of our teachers who have done the training. We've since layered in all of our school counselors so that they have the understanding. So if students are struggling, they can meet with their school counselor. And then we're talking about, it might not happen for next year, but in the future, looking at like, what are those specific lessons that all 6th graders need? And maybe we could do like a 6th grade boot camp for all JJMS students as they enter the building. Then we would do some sort of reboot for our 7th graders, and then say to our 8th grade teachers, like, these are the expectations that students should have so that they can be reinforced, whether it's a poster in the room or reminders at the beginning of the year. So yes, we are definitely talking about it. And also needing to continue to move our curriculum forward at the same time. So if anybody, like, I'm the person that's in charge of personnel in the building. So if you do have any questions about specific teachers, you can always email me. You can always email a counselor and just say, is there anything I should know about what's going on in this classroom or something like that? So I don't know if there are any specifics, but if there are, you can definitely either hang on afterwards. But it's definitely a concern. And to be honest with you, like going into the article, we're also very concerned about our staff and teachers' emotional wellness. If you turn on the news, this morning I was getting ready with Channel 4 on in the background. It was like every story was COVID, every single story. And to think about going into a classroom with, 20 something students every day, can be unnerving for our teachers as well. So, that anxiety hits everybody a little bit differently. Some people have kind of found it as their new normal, and other people are, anxious about being around people who may be COVID positive, especially given the current rates. So it's something that we are trying to say, take your time, connect with people, find some of that emotional wellness, but you can't necessarily force everybody to do that kind of thing. So it's about
Thank
taking care
you.
of ourselves. Yeah, sure. All right. So in preparing for this, I think, hopefully you've all read the article. If not, I've kind of highlighted a couple of spots that I think it is important for us to talk about. Again, the idea is to break into breakout rooms, but I'm looking at the number of people with their screens off, and I don't want people to be in breakout rooms on their own. So we'll try it maybe once for a minute or two, and if we come back and we find out that people were on their own, kind of talking to themselves, maybe we won't go there for the next round. But to me, at least, what I wanted everybody to hear, and Taryn, thank you very much. Taryn and Cheryl, thank you very much for sending this article to everybody. Number one, on the article itself says, adults, take care of your own well-being first. And I'll leave that, I think, and try to open up some breakout rooms. People just do 2 or 3 breakout rooms so that hopefully there's a couple people in each. But I would say that I think that that's a must. And at the same time, I often put myself last behind all the other people in my family. So that's my statement that I'll make. And so when you think about the idea of the quote on page, well, as I printed it out, page 2, but underneath, if for those of you who are looking at it, on your own screen, right underneath number 1, there are no healthy children without healthy adults. So I'm going to open up a couple of breakout rooms. I would like you just to talk about, what that feels like. Maybe I can't do breakout rooms. Taryn, do you have the ability to make breakout rooms? I'm not sure if we do. I see there's apps. I see recording.
I've never done anything like that.
That's okay. Maybe that's all right. So why don't we just talk about that, or take a moment to reflect on our own, and just take a minute to think to yourself, like, there are no healthy children without healthy adults. What does that mean for you and your family? And then those who are willing to share, we'll ask that you share. So take about 30 seconds. Okay, so we'll open it up for people to make comments aloud. You can also add your comments again, like if you're in a meeting or you're on another Zoom or something like that, if you want to add your thoughts to the chat because you still want to contribute to our conversation, you can definitely do that. But anybody like to share kind of like what that means? There are no healthy children without healthy adults. Share what that means with the group.
I'm happy to go. I've always lived as a parent that way. I, for some reason, have a lot of younger parents come up to me and say, how do you do it? And I really tell them they're flailing. You have infants and toddlers, and it's so much work, and it's physical work. And I think as the older they get, it's more mental work. But I think if you're not happy as a person, and as a person, as an individual, it's very hard to give to other people. And so I always tell people, you have to find time every day to give to yourself. I don't, if it's a half an hour, if it's 45 minutes, if it's reading a book or taking a walk or going on a run or seeing a friend, I think that or spending time with a friend or working on your relationship with your spouse, whatever that is, if you need to find that every day, because if you can't find happiness within yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to give to your children. So I think it's imperative. I really do.
Thank you. I think that idea about giving, again, as all of us as parents, I think it's such an important piece. We need to give time to our kids, and I totally agree with you, Catherine. Anybody else want to react to that or kind of add their own spin on what this quote means to them?
I mean, I'm a picture of mental health, so it's that's not no doubt about that. But it's the idea that it's the mirroring of the attitude is what I pick up so much from one of my kids is if I have a bad attitude about it, they're going to have a bad attitude about it, and that mirroring of that. As my wife will constantly remind me that this is your fault, but that's okay. We'll work on that in our relationship another way. But that is it. If I have a good attitude about it, they're far more open to being open to it. They may not want to do it. That's just teenagers, but at least they have a better attitude towards it. And I find that as Catherine kind of said, I got to get myself in the right attitude. I got to have myself in the right attitude. So that's part of that is taking care of myself. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand here.
Oh, okay.
Feel free. Yeah, just go ahead.
All right, thank you. I do believe in the mirroring. However, I also want to, I think this is a long-term, like major shift in outlook and where adults and our kids are going through it. And there are all these unintended consequences of like, how are they going to process this time? And they're going to process it differently than we are because we lived in another time. And they're reading all the gloom and doom, which is real. I'm not going to invalidate them. And I understand the attitude part, but it's not just attitude, because they're legitimate concerns. There's legitimate negativity about how they see adults have failed in the climate crisis. So I try to, and this is just going on and on. Like there's they read the news, they feel there's no end in sight. And I think the challenge is that you validate their feelings of concern about their future, but also remind them that there's still joy in life. And how you find that balance. And then like they feel like school's pointless if the world is shit, and these are like things that adolescents, teens are going through anyway, and how they're viewing the adult world and putting their parents under a microscope. So I have a concern that our culture has a lot of this positivity thing, like if you fake it till you make it or something. Cancer patients have to suffer. Oh, it's up to you. So there's a toxicity in being positive all the time. And I think we just have to acknowledge that. But my kids talk about how rah-rah teachers can really turn them off and make them withdraw. And that they like the teachers that are more chill and like not getting excited about Happy Monday. So that's it. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of goes into the next piece, right? So part 2 is talking to kids about their concerns and validating their feelings. And there was a lot of research. I know it's within a couple of months of the shutdown about talking about that toxic positivity, that like it's okay to say things are not okay. And that there are things that we need to continue to work on. So we'll come back to your points, I think, again in a minute. Anybody else want to talk about just the idea of there are no healthy children without healthy adults? Then we'll come to the next part.
I guess just one other thing I could add in terms of, taking time for yourself and mirroring also is just, it's a modeling too. If you take time for yourself, you're modeling that behavior for your children. Like if you say, you know what, I am feeling stressed right now, I need to go take a walk to take care of myself. Well, that's modeling a strategy to them, that they can also do if they're feeling overwhelmed or stressed. But I think then sometimes it also puts a lot of pressure on us to always have to handle it well, which I don't think, we can all do at all times as human beings.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think the thing that I hear kind of coming through on the people who have talked already is how hard that really is, right? So whether it's mirroring or whether it's like, oh my God, I've got all this stuff going on and my kids are getting off the bus any second and I've got to change my frame of mind before they come in the door, or you don't want to, as soon as they come in, you don't want to be like, gotta go for a run. So
which is how we all feel as soon as they
yeah,
come.
of course. Yeah, because we're all in our own thing. I will tell you, just seeing some friends over break a little bit, we were talking about missing those first couple of days of COVID. We had a good group of people that we kind of like hunkered down with, and how that we'll never get that time back. And we used to all do our jobs from whatever to whatever, and then we would set a time to meet and go for a hike. And the whole family went, and there were no devices, and our kids were learning how to skip rocks like they never did. And we've gone back and kind of into our device world, and recharging our batteries as we did before. And we were thinking about how important that physical activity piece was, and the connections and the stories we told, and damming up a river and making whatever it was, how much fun that was, and how we all miss it, and the importance of like trying to keep each other on track with trying to like get back into that mode, even if it's every once in a while, but missing like that we did like weeks of that at a time. I don't think there were any days that we didn't do a hike. Anyway, and how good that was for our mental health. Anyway, talking to kids about their concerns and validating their feelings. Again, I think, so that's part 2. I'm on page 3 as I printed it out, but you all might be on a different page. We're looking at it electronically. I will make the statement that if we all think back to our own days as an adolescent, we wanted less and less to do with our family. These are the times that kids break away a little bit. They find their friendships. They make a connection maybe with a trusted adult that's not in their house, whether it's a teacher, a counselor, a friend's parent, whoever it's going to be. And the importance of them having that outlet in a regular year, in a regular time. And then when we add all of the concerns about the pandemic, et cetera, the importance of kids having the ability to talk that through with somebody, I think, is really, really important. And validating feelings, talking about concerns, I think is just so important. So that has been some of the work that we've been doing. We talked about the social emotional lessons a little bit earlier. We talked to kids about validating each other's concerns. But why don't we just take a minute to reflect? Maybe this can be a little bit of a support group, how hard it is to validate the concerns of our kids. I will tell you, my son is a basketball player at the high school, and I watch him play, and the first thing I want to do when I get in the car is be like, oh, so what did you think about your game? And here's what I'm thinking. And I try my best every time to follow that old thing of like just saying, it was great to watch you play today. And if they want to talk about it, they can, but how hard it is to validate concerns when a lot of us probably want to fix. So just take a minute to just reflect on your own practices with validating, maybe looking back over the article or looking at the article and saying, is there something that I'd like to share with the group? So we'll give about 30 seconds to a minute. All right, so anything that jumps out to anybody that they'd like to talk about? Anything maybe you're struggling with? As a parent, I've already shared some of my own struggles. And that's not even a drop in the bucket of some of the things I struggle with as a parent. All right, since no one's sharing, I will recommend just a couple of things to everybody. I think down at the bottom of this, right before point 3, being aware of behavioral changes. Is there a decrease or increase in eating? Is there a decrease or increase in exercise? Who are the kids hanging out with? What are they doing? I think that's really the crux, I think, of adolescence, right? So what I've seen, whether it's with my own children or however many years I've been in the middle school, either as a teacher or as an administrator, there are some natural breaks that occur probably within the elementary friendships. Probably many of you have experienced that. I will tell you, living in my own house, I've experienced it more with my daughter probably than with my son. So I don't know if that connects home with any of you as well. But looking for some of those other telltale signs, decrease in increase or decrease in eating, increase or decrease in athletic ability, or desire to be athletic or exercise, that kind of thing. I think forcing our kids through some of that is really, really hard, especially given all the mental health concerns we have and not wanting to add that extra stress. That's probably what I deal with most as a parent, like trying to get out of that, like talking to my spouse about like, should we push here? Should we not push here? Is this a time to push? Should we have them talk to somebody? So again, that's my own baggage. I don't know if there's anybody who would like to share anything in response to that.
I'll say something. I don't, sorry, this isn't in direct response to what you're saying, but I would say it's hard to notice all the time they're changing so much at this time anyway. So it's hard to know how much, how they'd be different, not during a pandemic, but that's one thing that's been kind of interesting to see. How much is it happening anyway?
Yeah. Agreed.
One other thing I was going to say about validating what they're going through, I find sometimes that I'm just, all families are comfortable at different levels with exposure and getting together, letting their kids get together with friends outside, inside, masked, in a car, carpools, everything. And I find a lot of the time, like that's where sort of the conflict is happening with my son, and that it's helpful. Well, I have to catch myself sometimes and not be combative right when there's a like, well, everyone else is doing this, or these parents are letting them do this, and just trying a little more now to stop and just like, I get that when you're that age, it doesn't matter. All of this, it's sort of abstract, some of it, even if you're hearing about all of the depressing things and then with the rates. What matters is just what their friends are doing and what their friends are allowed to do and what they're missing. So, and I'm trying to channel that middle, early high schooler in me that remembers that really well. But it's hard.
We could spend an entire hour talking about that piece, but I'm sure that connected home with a lot of people. I'm watching some of the faces. So any reaction to that comment?
I think, Jeff, that and what Nora said too about validation, sometimes I find it more helpful as opposed to difficult to validate what they're saying or how they're feeling. A lot of times I agree with what they're saying, particularly with what's going on globally. I think by validating what they're feeling and what they're going through, instead of dismissing like, oh, it's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine, we'll be fine in a week or a month or a year. I think by not dismissing it and validating it, I think it's helpful for them to hear that it's okay to feel that way. But then following that with a little bit of a discussion, not a lecture or anything that's going to have them tune out, but just giving them one or two ways to look at it differently or one or two ways to handle it. This was what works for me. The other day I was feeling this way and I tried this, maybe give it a shot. Just simple little suggestions, even though, you know, what we're dealing with is ridiculous and very difficult. Just giving them something to look at that's good. One of my daughters just got one of those big gigantic packs of stickers from Amazon that they put on their water bottles, and it was full of motivational sayings, expressions, or whatever. And one of them that she kind of gravitated to was "see the good." And I was like, wow, that's awesome. You know, and she put that on her water bottle, and that's kind of become our phrase for the past couple of weeks. We got to see the good and start with that. And then what does that look like for whatever situation she's dealing with? But really helping them understand it's okay to feel the way they do, but then as adults, maybe providing them with a couple strategies or different ways to look at it, that it's not all as bad as it seems sometimes, and that there is still good out there. But as Hannah said, it's not, you know, positivity all the time, I think is they sometimes feel lied to about that because they know it's not necessarily true. And that's okay too. They can't grow up in more of a bubble than they already are. And I think that validation is important to start with so that they feel heard and know that it's okay. But then as adults, helping them figure out ways to handle it with, you know, hikes or time or just a break, you know, time in their room or time with friends if possible. But I think all of it's important.
Great, thank you. Anybody else like to react to anything that's been said recently?
I just wanted to add that I think, I mean, we're very like together. The four of us and my family are always together. So there's not a lot of, we don't really have to like ask a lot of questions. They're very open. But I do feel like sort of validating what they're going through in by adjusting what we do, because we've always been like a homework first, as soon as you come in the door kind of family, and we're always doing things. But both of my kids have expressed how tired they are when they come home, and I think they actually are more tired because it takes a lot more out of them. So I'm giving them time when they come home to just do nothing, like things like that, versus, but it's really hard for me to not be like, come on, get it done, let's, you know, get on with things. But just stuff like that, you know, it's hard for me to, because my way of dealing with things is probably to try to control things more with them, but I have to just give them space. And that's kind of how we've been trying to validate that they are going through this big traumatic thing that we all are.
Yeah. And I think, Eileen, it talks about, you know, in the article, like kids embrace structure and routine, but that doesn't mean it needs to be the same structure and routine. And I appreciate you saying, like, you know, that there's a change needed and it's coming from my kids and I'm noticing, and I think that's awesome. But there's still some sort of routine that they can predict, and there is some comfort in that when the rest of the world does feel kind of like out of their control, and to the points before about climate change or whatever it is. It's like, here are the things I can control. So, let's stick with that routine. Let's stick with that structure. Let's stick with our family meals, although it's really, really hard, and turn off our devices for 15 minutes or half an hour, everybody. And really, again, just kind of be present for each other. So thank you very much for sharing that. Other reactions or other things people would like to share?
And I think one thing that I find challenging, and I apologize if any of this was said already because I had to step away for a minute, is kind of the ambiguity of everything, and how right now it's like you can't make any plans. You can't say this is what's going to happen. Things are changing every day. Like, before my daughter got vaccinated, we kept telling her, once you're vaccinated, we're going to be able to do these things. And now, everything's so bad again, and now we can't do anything. Or, over break, we had all these plans, and then Christmas Eve, my daughter tested positive for COVID, and that's it. And then we did nothing. So, I mean, I think that's something with, that I think my children are constantly wanting to know what's going to happen, and are we going to be able to do this? Am I going, and, to not have answers for anything is a challenge.
Well, and especially kids who struggle with anxiety. One of my sons really does. Not being able to say this is what's going to happen really is a trigger. So that is a good point, Cheryl.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a crash course in flexibility, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody experienced that. And again, I think we're still experiencing it kind of like hour by hour here right now.
Yeah.
You probably all read the superintendent's message last night. And we've seen what's happening with the airlines, and, the things that are supposed to be aren't. I know there was like one Broadway show that just shut down for a couple of weeks, and like that's not that far from here. And so it's just like that constant level of uncertainty does provide, anxiety. I think that comes with any uncertainty. So again, like looking back at this article, I think it's a decent blueprint to at least use when you're feeling overwhelmed. Like, we can always go back to the article and say, here's something that we can do. Like, how about a little bit of routine? How about a little bit of like, everybody takes a little emotional break at, right before dinner or something like that every night. Or, phones come out of the bedrooms at night, even if they're used for an alarm clock. Like, I think that there are certain things that we can do to lower that level of anxiety, because I think we all know if we were to turn on the TV right now, we know exactly what the stories would be. It's just like, what's that next doom and gloom that's coming? And trying to keep, again, like adolescence, it happens anyway, right? That questioning of yourself and where do I fit in the world? And when the world is constantly changing, it's hard for them to find that answer. So having that time of reflection, and I loved Kristen's suggestions before of like, here's how I would handle it, and then giving your kid time to process how they will handle it on their own, because they do have to make those decisions for themselves. I think that that's a really, really a good thing to say. Here's how I would do it, and let me know how it works for you, or if you want to talk about it more and kind of process this a little bit more. Being there for your kids, I think, is just such an important piece.
Jeff, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
So I know it's freezing out and we're not there yet. And everyone, I mean, I had a conversation with two of my friends. I feel like we don't really have anything to look forward to right now. I feel like this weekend, what am I doing? Nothing. What about next week?
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can start? I know there's like one activity for each grade, but is there anything like as the weather starts warming up, we can start planning more activities, even if it's, I don't know if it's on the weekends or after school, for the kids outside to kind of get together and do something fun to get them excited? I don't know, whether it be an extra field day or just something just to bring them all together. My son's in 7th grade, and I feel like he still doesn't know, like they've never really all been together outside in a field. I don't know. I'm just trying to thinking ahead. Once it starts getting warmer out, is there any additional like fun activities we can think about?
Yeah, sure. And again, I think this is a good group to have that conversation with, whether we want to. We do have like a PTO executive board meeting right after this, so we can definitely put that on the agenda to see if there are any other things. But again, we can welcome anybody to a group or set up another subgroup that would be willing to look at and organize those types of things as well, even if it is something like us contacting the athletic department and saying we'd like to reserve the football field on a Saturday from 12 to 2 and just come and throw the football around or kick the soccer ball around, or basically
Right.
like weekend recess or whatever we want to
Right. When
whatever we
all
want
the
to call
kids
it.
could show up, or even an outside movie night on the field one night for the kids, or something fun. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm just trying to think of extra things that to bring these kids together once it warms out up and they can
Yeah.
kind of be outside.
Yeah, agreed. And we're trying to do the best that we can here, but again, it's,
Yeah.
based on our size and the distancing
Totally.
we have to give. Unfortunately, we can't do too much within the school day.
Right. No, I get.
And I know we'll be talking about some of the night events and,
Mhm.
planning for those and hoping that, some of this current surge is done by the time that we, have to put a number of kids in a room or whatever that is. So like
Right.
that's I think what we're constantly trying to fight, right? So even like grouping in classrooms, something as simple and as normal and as time honored as moving out of the 70s and 80s of everybody being in the same row. It's like we really want kids to do group work, but not too close.
Right.
So like it's like we constantly have this like push and pull that we're all dealing with. And again, coming out of the holiday, I'm sure all of you felt the same way. About activities, or Cheryl's example before of, and then it was the night before Christmas, and all through the house it was COVID. So it's like you just have to kind of adjust, and that is our normal now. And hopefully we'll put this in a rear view mirror one of these days, but I probably said the same thing a year ago. So that's the I think the hard part for all of us who are planners and everything, like all this uncertainty. It just like we're constantly in it, and you see it during the holidays usually. And I don't know if any of you were able to get out of like drive around town or whatever it was, but I've just noticed a lot more like people just driving selfishly, acting selfishly, me first. And I get it. Like you have to take care of yourself first. It's what we just read in the article. And at the same time, we are still part of a community. We're still part of a culture. We're still part of, a state, et cetera. And so taking the time to hold the door for somebody else every once in a while, I think just goes a long way in today's age. So anyway, that's not my soapbox. The last thing I did want to point out here, and again, we can kind of come back to anything we've talked about already. It's just the what to do if you're stuck, what to do if you feel like you really need help. There is, a crisis text line that is on here. There's a suicide prevention lifeline that's on here. This is through NPR that this story came through. I know it's a couple of months old now. You can always email our counselors, administrators. I just can't guarantee that everybody is going to get emails at all time. So if you feel like it's not a pressing issue, like a right now issue, you can always let us know that your child had a tough weekend, or here's something they're currently struggling with. We have weekly team meetings here. So if you just wanted to confide in a counselor could then share that information with the team. If you wanted to share with the team teachers or a team leader, you can definitely do that. But again, adolescence is hard enough to get through in a normal year. Again, I know I've said this before, but probably not many of us will go back to our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade days. And I don't think that hopefully, when our kids are our age, I'm not sure any of them would go back to these COVID times, just because of the constant uncertainty. So whenever you feel like you need help or your child needs help, make sure that you're reaching out to us, or never feel like you need to hesitate from contacting a hospital. The emergency room is the best place to go in an absolute emergency. Or you can always call the police. Anyway, that's the extreme, but we've seen more extremes than we have in previous years here. So just want to make sure everybody understands that piece as well. Right, on that downer, anybody else want to share anything else that we've talked about today, or just bring anything else up, whether it's a question you have that's we're going on here in the building, or other questions, concerns, anything before we close up?
Sorry, I know this is late and I've been listening to everybody's wonderful comments. I appreciate all the things, and I haven't added to because they're mirroring and sort of saying the things that I've been thinking and agreeing with as well. The last point that is it Lee? I think you just mentioned about something to look forward to. I was just suddenly thinking about for the children, it's all the stresses and the also mentioning how we have to look after ourselves, and there's this kind of selfish community that is starting to show itself out there. And I'm wondering if one of those things for the students and the parents, if it's thinking about other people, how can we help other people who are also in need? And if there's any, for want of a better word, but like charitable goal, or you do food drives where kids get involved and do things like that. But I'm just wondering if there's things like that that helps help all of us remember that we feel better when we are helping other people in need, and it makes us realize that there is a world greater than ourselves and our little, stresses at home, and it just brings you out of it. So I'm wondering if there's, something like that could be thought about, or, a community effort. And I know there are things that are done, and there are definitely different charitable drives and things, but if there's, 2 or 3 different smaller things that people could hook onto. I don't have a specific idea in mind. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here as I'm hearing all the comments. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll bring that to I know our student council has reached out with those types of things in the past. So I'll make sure that I bring that to the student council as well. So thank you.
Jeff, I think too, from a PTO perspective, in the past, the PTO has joined up with the student council to organize some of these types of things. So I think that's definitely something we should look into. The kids get excited about it when there's like a goal at the end of it, raising this or collecting this or whatever. We'll try to be creative in what we can do that is both COVID safe, and to Louise's point, that really bringing some joy in helping others. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it could be, like a fun day. So it doesn't have to be, okay, we just want everyone to donate food or something, but it could just be a fun day out, and the proceed, kind of what you have been doing with Halloween events and different things, but something, those kids who love skiing and outdoor activities, maybe there's something that could be developed around that. I don't know, something.
Yeah, there was a great fundraiser, or sort of, I don't even know exactly, I'd have to look into it, but at KES, where the kids were encouraged to like walk the track, and each mile they walked or one loop around the track was equal to some, goal towards, the ultimate, fundraising goal or something. So I think we could definitely come up with something fun. I'll put it on the agenda for sure today. And I love
Blend it with Lee's
with-
idea of getting the kids out.
Yeah.
I'm all out to do something outside. And
And nature is the big, mental health, support, right? So getting out there into, as much as I don't like the cold outside, but I think it does help you when you do get out and do something.
On that point about nature, and just if we are kind of blue skying opportunities or ideas to get kids outside, and I don't know if there would be liability issues or if we can't arrange things that aren't on our own campus, but the Ward Pound Ridge Reservation is such a great resource. But I sometimes think, kids after a certain point, they don't really want to walk with their parents in the woods anymore. But if there was an opportunity to meet up with other adolescents, and maybe like a high school student could guide them on a hike or something like that, the Pound Ridge Reservation has its own staff that facilitates these kinds of things in the summer. But we also have our own students who are so knowledgeable about the trails. And I just wonder, could older kids be, somehow authorized or deputized to lead a group of middle school kids on a hike or something like that, a winter walk, or sledding in the in the reservation when it's winter, but these are more like social things. And I don't know, maybe it's just on us to reach out to each other and to set up opportunities to be social outdoors. I think this is just a tough age because kids want to be independent. They know they should sort of be making their own plans, but at least in my household, my middle schooler isn't quite fully launched in terms of being able to do that herself, and yet she definitely doesn't want me to do it. But if it was something that was like school organized and a bunch of kids were going, then I sometimes tell myself maybe she would be more motivated. But I don't know, I feel like these are just the small little private interactions that we're all negotiating with our kids to try to help them feel connected when I think it's just really easy to feel lonely right
Yeah.
now.
I think that's a great idea about like high schoolers leading them on a hike. We've had that problem. We're hikers and birders and they just don't want to do anything with us. And they look up to the older kids. I think, and it can be incorporated into science or nature or something, the environment, climate. I read something about in December, there were some dogs that came. And I think at Ridgefield High School, they have it like regularly.
Yeah, at the middle
I know
school.
that was a real big thing for my son. We have 3 dogs and that's like the highlight is coming off the bus and seeing the dogs after school. Is there an outdoor thing? I know allergies, whatever, liability always is an issue. I don't know what Ridgefield High School does, but I just thought like during the day, that's like a therapy pop.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible at the middle school.
Yeah, definitely. So that's Scotts Ridge Middle School, which is right on the same campus as the high school. The assistant principal is actually part of this community. And it's through Guiding Eyes, and they've actually added a number of therapy dogs, trained therapy dogs to their community. Where we are trying, we do have some faculty members actually who are interested in training their dogs and bringing their dogs to school, et cetera. And we are trying to connect with Roar, which is in Ridgefield. That's where we got that first dog from. And unfortunately, they had canceled the second one. But we're hoping to make that more and more part of our community here. We did go visit Scotts Ridge Middle School one of the mornings, and we saw kind of like their structures. They have 4 dogs at the entrance every day. Kids who are interested stop by and pet the dogs, and those who aren't just walk right by. Kids make their own like taking the dog out routine. It ends up being a lot 6th grade and then kind of like weaning out a little bit more in 7th and 8th grade, but you'll also see a dog in a classroom as kids are like laying on the floor writing, there's a dog right next to them. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool practice, but they've been into that, I think, for about 10 years now over there. So yeah, and we've looked at some of the other research. There are some other places down county who do it too, but really you need a commitment from your faculty to bring their own dogs. And there is a liability piece and there's an insurance piece, and that we're working on with some individual people. But I think our community agrees with you, especially our school psychologists, that would be an awesome addition to our community. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, I'll say thank you. We're right at about an hour. So again, thank you for all of you who were able to turn your cameras on. Those of you who joined us, that was awesome. Thank you for contributing, even though, like me, usually I probably share too much information, so too much personal information, but that's up for my therapy with my kids at a later time. So thank you very much for those of you who joined us and contributed, and really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Happy
Thanks
New
for
Year,
everyone for
everybody.
being
Happy
here.
New Year, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you
Happy
so
New
much
Year.
for hosting this. Thank you.